This story is entitled Skin Stitched Puppets, written by Ghost Boy. The original text version of this story can be found in the description of this video. You know those creepy ventriloquist puppet stores you see in movies they use to make an uncomfortable setting? Those kinds where what look like hundreds of old wood and porcelain puppets suspended by strings used to make them dance. Where you feel at any moment the creepy little fuckers will spring to life and you can feel their dead, painted-on eyes following your every move. Yeah, we had one of those in my hometown. This place would put any horror movie to shame by a mile. The place looked like it was built in the late 1700s, at the most. Made almost entirely of wood with absolutely zero windows. And while it had modern day accommodations on the inside, it was shot to holy hell. The lights flickered every minute. That's if the bulbs weren't busted, which was about 50% of the time. The heat rarely ever worked, and the place was known for 4 separate gas leaks. Me and my old man even offered to fix the place up after we got our contracting licenses, but they declined pretty quickly. The only thing missing that would have made this place an absolute cliche would be if the owner was some creepy old dude with one blind eye and a patchy beard. And while that was once the case, that was well before I or even my parents had been born. I believe the story goes the man running it during my time in that town was his great-great-grandson or something like that. He was an, I would say, 25-ish-year-old, pale, tall, slick of a man with jet black hair, always slicked back. And while not exactly creepy, he was certainly strange. For starters, he only ever wore black, 3-piece business suits at all times, and his voice sounded almost robotic and muffled, not to mention extremely bored. He also had no real name, that or he just refused to tell anyone, so we all called him the Puppeteer. Strangest thing of all was his eyes. His irises and pupils looked like multicolored TV static. At first, I thought it meant he was blind, but according to him, it's just a birth defect. I've been inside a couple of times, out of curiosity, considering I walked past it every day on my way home from school for years, and let me just say, absolute nightmare fuel. If it wasn't bad enough, the place was built like the Sawyer's home from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The puppets reached so far down the uncanny valley that they've reached the bottom, especially the eyes. Not a single doll, marionette, or puppet had 2 of the same colored eyes, and resembled snake eyes more than humans. It wasn't until my last trip to the place that I found out how evil this place truly was. And it all started with a simple bet.
Guarantee I can stay longer than you,
my friend Chris said as he, his girlfriend Lizzie, her twin sister Layla, and our friend David walked home from school. But why spend the night in the first place? I asked, stuffing my hands in my pockets. He smirked.
What? Someone being a little bitch? Are you scared? Lose your balls in your purse?
He mocked as he bumped my shoulder.
I'm with Alex on this one, dude. This place isn't exactly suited for overnight stays,
David added.
Oh, of course you would. You're a total pussy, dude,
Chris quickly retorted. David gritted his teeth and looked at Chris.
Hey, you are what you eat, dick lips,
he spat back with a snarl. Layla then sheepishly spoke up on the matter.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of that in the slightest.
Lizzie laughed.
Why not? Thought you'd be jumping on the chance to spend a good night jumping on our good old conductor's train,
She said, looking over her shoulder to her sister with a malicious grin as she watched Layla's face grow tomato red from both anger and embarrassment. I had simply rolled my eyes. Lizzie liked messing with people more than her boyfriend. This was far from the first time she's called us out to try getting a ride from her sister, which almost never failed, no matter how many times it had happened.
It's contractor, dummy.
Chris corrected her teasingly.
You think a clown would operate a train? It's a miracle he can use power tools.
He continued to mock. Lizzie quickly added her 2 cents.
Damn, I totally could have made a drilling or screwing pun. Golden opportunity right through my fingertips.
She said with a small laugh.
Didn't you fail wood processing for playing with a power saw? You aren't exactly an Einstein either, buddy.
I laughed with a middle finger salute as we began walking past the shop.
Well, what'll it be, everyone?
Chris asked, looking at the 3 of us. After a slight sigh, I threw my head back. Fine. If it'll shut you up, I'm in, I replied. Layla slowly followed with a small, simple nod before David eventually caved as well.
Then it's settled. We will come back here at 10 p.m. tonight,
Chris announced before we continued our walk back to our neighborhood. Once 10 p.m. came around, I suddenly found myself in a puppet store.
Can you believe this place doesn't have any locks? I was fully ready to show off my picklocking 100 skills trees,
Chris said as he walked through the door. I definitely can. Who in Saint's hell would want to break into this place? I replied as we scanned the area, surveilling the old stuffed and carved puppets. I was almost waiting for one of the little freaks to spring to life and jump us at any second.
Us?
David added as we began searching for the light switch.
He's got you there.
Layla teased with a small laugh before the fact she was surrounded by old puppets kicked in, where she quickly hopped behind me, clutching the back of my shirt, almost as if trying to hide from them.
Can we go now? This place is giving me the creeps,
she said softly, almost whimpering. I laughed and looked over my shoulder. Oh, yeah? Just wait till midnight. They say that's when they come to life, I teased, trying to lighten the mood, fully expecting a quick-witted response as normal, but that wasn't the case.
I'm serious, Alex. I'm getting a really bad vibe. It doesn't feel safe here, and I really don't want to spend the night surrounded by these things,
she said in a somewhat cry. I could hear the shakiness in her voice. Now I was a little concerned. I mean, sure, she wasn't exactly the bravest girl around, but I've certainly never seen her this worried. I turned around softly, putting my hands on her shoulders. Hey, relax, there's nothing to be scared of. They're just dolls. Besides, you really want to deal with everyone else breathing down our necks about wussing out? After a long pause, she slowly nodded. After all, your sister did bring up a pretty valid point this afternoon. A lot of empty aisles and janitorial offices around, I said, with a few over-exaggerated eyebrow raises. That seemed to put her a little more at ease, giving a soft chuckle.
Yes, hooking up surrounded by weird puppets and Corax bottles. You are truly such a romantic,
she responded sarcastically. However, this brief sense of security was quickly taken away by the sounds of David's screams, before being abruptly cut off by what sounded like a closing door.
Yo, what the fuck was that?
I heard Chris ask as he and Lizzie rounded a corner. I pointed my flashlight towards where the scream had come from. It sounded like Davy. We should probably go look for him. He could be hurt, I said, looking at the group. Chris slightly scoffed with an eye roll.
Yeah, sure, but $10 says he tripped on a pile of dummies and went bitch boy on us again,
he said as we began to make our way down the aisles in search of David. I was definitely on Chris's side with this one. After all, David was well known throughout school for having a rather weak fear for tolerance. I mean, the kid literally got scared by his own shadow once. The idea of freaking out in a place like this was honestly expected. Unfortunately for me, Layla was not so convinced. The whole walk, she was clinging onto my arm hard enough for her nails to break the skin and draw blood, her grip tightening every other step. We searched for a good 2 hours with no luck. That was until Lizzie found a rip in the carpet. It was a small 5 foot by 5 foot square cut into a corner section, just barely noticeable. I slowly crouched down to peel the carpet up, and underneath was a small metal latch door.
Oh, fuck that. Tell me you aren't planning to go down there.
Lizzie asked me as I lifted the door up to reveal a metal 12-foot tall ladder. I sighed as I pointed my flashlight down the opening. We've searched everywhere up here with no luck finding David. He could be down there. Chris raised his eyebrow and crossed his arms.
Dude, you really think David will go down there in a secret basement in a place like this?
He had a fair point, but then caused a thought to go through my head that momentarily froze time in fear. What if he didn't go down willingly? I muttered slowly. That puts everyone on edge sharper than a razor blade.
Yeah, stop fucking with us,
Chris said with a slightly nervous laugh. Did you check to see if the dude maybe stays here overnight? I turned, asking Chris before looking at the sisters. Did we do any sort of scouting before stepping foot in this building? No, we just walked in, I announced before turning back around, taking a deep breath, completely disregarding all common sense, and began my descent to this hidden cellar.
Alex, man, seriously? Are you nuts? Let's just leave. Can we call the cops?
Chris asked, crouching over the hole. Yup, 100%, but we dragged him here. I'm not leaving him behind, I replied, continuing my climb down.
Alex, for Christ's sake, please climb back up here.
Layla joined in desperation. Her sister just looked down with disapproval of my actions, but there was no turning back once my feet touched the ground.
Fuck it. Shit, fuck it. Alright, let's do this shit.
I heard Chris spouting off nervously before he joined me. The girls followed quickly. I looked at Layla, but before I could say anything, she spoke for me.
No, we are not ditching you guys, or going to be alone in this place,
she said sternly. So with a soft sigh, I agreed, and we made our way forward. At first, it was just a long metal hallway, no lights or anything. After about 10 minutes of walking, we heard something again. It wasn't David's screams, but a strange mix of jazz and disco music. Another 5 minutes and we saw flashing rainbow strobe lights, just bright enough to see a small door ahead of us. We slowly made our way around the corner to see life-size puppets, some dancing, others playing instruments. The closer we got, we saw the puppeteer conducting his band with thin red strings, waving his arms and fingers around before suddenly stopping, and in the blink of an eye, he vanished for a second.
How are you enjoying the show?
We heard a low, monotone voice from behind us. We quickly turned around to see the man, his tall stature and static eyes staring down on us.
Where's David? What did you do with him?
Chris demanded, trying to hide any fear rather terribly. Suddenly, the man's face grew a large smile.
Why don't you get a better seat, huh, kids?
He asked in a somewhat patronizing tone before shoving us into the center of the room, The man had arms like twigs, yet he was able to toss all four of us to the center of the stage with ease, where we looked up to see David dressed as a smooth jazz saxophonist, suspended by strings. Patches of his flesh had been replaced with tattered, worn-down rags and sacks, crudely stitched together. Some areas were torn to reveal freshly created lacerations. His left forearm bore a stuffed rag doll-esque arm and a wood marionette puppet's hand. His legs had been sawed off from the knees down, replaced with metal prosthetics. He had been completely gutted. Most of his insides had been replaced with cotton stuffing. And his face, Christ, his face! One eye had been gouged out, replaced with what looked like a glass cat eye. The other eye left untouched to show life had completely drained from it. The ends of his mouth had been stitched upwards to create a permanent smile. It didn't take long for us to realize each and every one of these puppets were once people. Upon further inspection, some were still alive. He confirmed so as he walked up to what appeared to be a 30-ish-year-old dude dressed as James Bond, if he was made by Frankenstein, drinking a martini.
As you can see, I keep my favorites alive. Isn't that right, Mikey? Mikey here came across a crappy TV I tossed out in this world. Long story short, I found my television and my new best buddy,
he said aggressively and sarcastically, tussling the man's hair. His once flat, bored voice now sounds completely sadistic. He then looked at our group and narrowed his eyes and gave another menacing grin.
Like you kids, I respect your choice to come looking for your friend, so I've decided I'll spare you from death.
Before any of us could react, he had his hands around my arms, his thumb grazing the small cuts Layla had left.
Oh, I see someone's already got starting points,
he said mockingly before shoving his fingers into the wounds, pushing down until the once small cuts matched the size of bullet holes. I let out a sharp yell of pain before my arm went completely numb, as he pulled his fingers out while pulling my arm upwards. I looked up to see he had attached those same red threads to me from my wound that had spread across my shoulder blades, sinking into my other arm and effectively eliminating any use in my arms. Getting an up-close look at them, they weren't just threads, but muscle tissue growing from his fingertips. The others tried to help, but the puppeteer used his free hand to keep them pinned down with his human dolls, as he used the other to pull me closer.
Now, time to work,
he said with a twisted grin, slowly bringing his face just inches from mine, staring deep into my eyes.
Now, which one to take?
He debated. I saw an opening to do something. I didn't know if this thing felt pain, but I really didn't have anything left to lose. I cranked my head back as far as possible before slamming it into his face. To my relief, I was met with the sound of a loud crack and a slew of curses towards me.
Oh, you little shit stain. You're done now,
he said. He completely failed to realize he just released the others to stop the flow of thick black blood pouring out of his nose. Not taking much, fight or flight kicked in. After seeing what this sick fucker had done to everyone, I did something I didn't know I was or could be capable of doing. I shot my head forward again, towards his neck, sinking my teeth in deep, and with all the force I could possibly use, I began to tear his throat open. I can still taste that burnt, rubber, charred meat blood. With this, the thing dropped to the ground, his tendrils retreating back into his fingers as it began covering the hole I had just put into his neck. We all quickly began running back towards the exit, but it wasn't long until a loud cackle could be heard, along with claps from both him and his puppets.
Good show, Alex. Good show. Maybe I can use you for more than display.
I was fully expecting some sort of chase, but no, that wasn't the case. We made it back out with no other difficulties. We went to the police and reported David had gone missing after saying he was going to the marionette shop. We left out the fact we had technically broken into the place. Saying what we really saw would either put us high up on the suspect lists or in padded wall rooms. Of course, nothing came up, and David's still labeled as missing. The puppeteer is the #1 suspect, but he left town the morning after the incident. Seeing as he had no real name and no description, the man has never been reported or ever seen. It's been about 7 years since then. Chris ended up spiraling out of control. He started taking some seriously heavy shit, started drinking like an Irishman on St. Patrick's Day until skipping town. He said he was gonna find David. He's been off the grid ever since. That's what we thought at first anyways. You see, Layla and I managed to stay together after all these years, and I've recently proposed to her. About an hour ago, in the middle of the night, we received 2 rings on the doorbell. Layla managed to sleep through it. I, however, did not. Going to see who it was, I opened the door. I didn't see anything but a small package labeled, "Congrats, Alex." What set me on edge was who sent it. Chris. I slowly opened the box to pull out a small, skin-bound ragdoll looking identical to my old friend. 2 different eyes, a glass snake eye and a very realistic dead one. I really don't know what I'm going to tell Layla, but I know damn well who really sent me this doll.